Now that you've seen the CloudKit dashboard in action, it's time to build our own. So here I am on the dub-dub-grub container. Last video, we showed you how to navigate here. Hopefully you can get here. So make sure you're on the right container if you have multiples, and click schema, because that's what we're going to build. So click on schema. Here we go. Just like I mentioned in the last video, here's our default user. That should be all you have to start with. Now this default user type is what you get kind of with that automatic authentication, which as soon as somebody comes into your app with an iCloud account, it creates this user type. It's a little bit restrictive in that you can't query it. So you'll see this is why we have to create our DDG profile object. I'll dive into that more, once we do it. But the only thing we're going to add onto this user type in the custom fields is a reference to our DDG profile, because the DDG profile is kind of like a proxy for our user object. So here under custom fields, hit add fields, user profile, and that is not going to be an asset, right? That is going to be a reference. And you don't have to say what it's a reference to, just let it know, hey, this is a reference, and then you create that reference later. But for now, hit save in the lower right. Sometimes I have to hit it twice. I don't know if you have that issue as well. But anyway, the only custom field on our default CloudKit user object is a reference to the user profile. Now let's start building the schema for our custom types, our DDG location and our DDG profile. We'll start with the DDG location first. So the first thing you want to do, hit plus new type. See new record type, name it DDG location. Great, hit return. Saving record type, there you go. And then we get all the default system fields, and then you can add all your custom fields. Now, when I'm building kind of like my data model and my objects for my apps, when we build it, you're going to kind of see we have like the final product, but I want to be very clear. That's not exactly how it goes. So the process, that I usually go through is I'll pull up my design. No, not that one. That's the final design. Usually it's this sketch one, right? When I'm just getting started. And I look at, for example, this location detail kind of mock-up. And I start writing down what I'll need. So if we kind of go roughly top to bottom, right? Okay, I'm gonna need a banner image. I'm gonna need a description. I have my buttons, so I'm gonna need some sort of location, a website. So like I said, I have this design up and I'm like writing down my objects, and then I come into CloudKit and then I built it here. And one thing I wanna point out, because again, we're gonna kind of do the final version, is this can evolve over time. You can find out during development, oh crap, I need an extra field on my DDG location. So you come in here, add a field. Or, oh, you know what? I'm not going to use that field. So you can come in here and delete it. So again, be very clear. When you're developing, this usually evolves, but we're going to kind of start with our final version. So I'll throw up the final version and we'll run down a couple of fields here. I like to start top to bottom. So at the very top in the nav bar, we have the name. Okay, so I'm going to need a name. I'm going to need a banner asset. I'm going to need the address, that little address that you see here, and then a description. So let's start with those four. So we'll say address, and that is of type string here. And we're going to add another field called banner asset. And I called this banner asset, not banner image, because as you see here on the right, it defaults to an asset. What we're going to get down from the CloudKit server is something called a CK asset. And then on our client side in the app, we have to convert that CK asset into an image to use within our app. So I don't want to call this an image because we're not really getting an image back. We're getting the asset back. So anyway, just some naming things there. Okay, so after the banner asset, like I said, well, I started with address. I should have started with name, because name was at the very top. It doesn't matter. You're going to see when I hit save, it puts these in alphabetical order. So what order you put them in doesn't matter. So the name of my location is a string. And then, like I said, I needed a description. Cool, and that, of course, is a string. And by the way, if you mess this up, like let's say you save it and it's the wrong type, you see the little minus buttons over here on the right. That's how you delete a field, re-add it, no big deal. Like I said, making a mistake here, not the end of the world. After you push it to production, now you're kind of stuck with it. So you definitely want to be careful before you push it to production. But while you're developing, mess it up all you want. Who cares? Okay, so custom fields now. Let's pull up the design again real quick and go over our buttons. So we're going to need a location to show me where to go on the map. We're going to need a website and then a phone number, right? Those are the next three. So if I hit add field, the location here on the right, I'm trying to move this up, but it's kind of towards the bottom. But you see, we can actually do a location, which this is in fact a CL location. So this will have a latitude and longitude. So that's great. Kind of the benefit of working with CloudKit is you get like, iOS compatible objects. Whereas if you're working with, some third party thing, you're just going to get generic JSON. You got to do a lot of conversions in your app. But here we get a CL location that we can just put on our object. So that's great. We're going to call that, of course, location. And then add field again. We're going to do website URL. That is a string. And then add another field. We're going to call this phone number. Now, one quick thing about a phone number, you might think that it is an int or something, or a double, right? It's a number. Well, it wouldn't be a double. There's no decimals. You might think it's an int, right? But it's not. It's actually a string. And the reason being, when you use the code to deep link into the phone, in Swift, you actually pass in a string for the phone number. So again, another benefit of building your own data set when you know how you're going to use it in the app is, from a normal API, you might get the phone number back as an int, maybe. Maybe it's a string, maybe it's an int, who knows. But if it was an int, you would have to do the conversion to a string on the app and do that. You just kind of get rid of a lot of those annoying conversions from normal JSON when you build the data yourself and you know how you're going to use it. So again, another advantage there. So now pulling up the design, the final thing you see here is our list of people. Now, I want to talk about something real quick because it was my intuition and it may be your intuition to be oh, our DDG location should maybe have an array of references pointing to users. That kind of makes sense. And again, that was my first thought as well. But after watching WWDC CloudKit best practices, which I linked to, I think in a couple videos ago, I'll link to it in this one as well. You can watch that. They talk about this specific kind of error called conflicts. And basically what happens is if you have an array attached to your location and multiple people are trying to check into that location at the same time, well, your data can get out of sync. There's some conflicts. So a way to avoid that error completely is do what they call a back pointer, which is what we're going to do. So how we're going to check into a location is on our DDG profile, which is essentially our user, we're going to have a property called isCheckedIn that is going to be a reference to a location. So for example, the Sean user, if I'm checked into Chipotle, I will have a reference to Chipotle. And if I'm not checked in, my reference of isCheckedIn will be nil. So that is why we're not having an array of users checked in on our location, even though that may be the intuitive way to do it. Again, feel free to watch the WWDC video. They talk about this kind of problem for 5 straight minutes, nice graphic examples. They use a photo album example if you want to really dive into that. I recommend it. If you're going to use CloudKit, definitely watch those WWDC videos. So the last thing we're missing that's not actually on our detail screen is our square asset, right? Because on our location list screen, well, they look like circles, but they're actually, squares that we clip into a circle. But we need that little smaller square asset. So add field in the lower right. Same thing we did for banner asset, except we're going to call it square asset, and that is of type asset. So hit save. Choose a name before saving. Okay, I must have hit, okay. Minus, I think I added an extra field. Again, sometimes I have to click twice on these things in my CloudKit. I don't know if that's just me. But so now if we look at our DDG location, we have address, banner asset, description, location, name, phone number, square asset, website URL. We're good to go on our location as far as what properties we want. Now, the thing with CloudKit is you need to tell it what you want to be queryable and sortable and all that stuff. So you're not just able to query everything. You have to be very explicit. So up here in the system fields on record name, that's what we're going to make queryable. And then we're going to make our name sortable in case we want to sort alphabetically in our list. We're going to show you that. So if you hit edit indexes here in the lower right, hit add an index. Again, we want our record name to be queryable. That's how we query by record ID. And then now we want to add another index. Now we want to go, you see, this is all the stuff we just added. So if we want to sort by name, so hit name, and then, if you wanted to query by name, you could do that. We're not having that behavior. Maybe you were introducing a search field and you wanted people to be able to search by location and they typed in the name. Well, then you would want name to be queryable. However, we're just going to do, well, I guess searchable, sortable for the name because we want to be able to sort by name. So I wanted to show you that and make sure you hit save changes just to show you that you don't get explicit query on everything. You have to tell it, what you want. So back to, we're on indexes in the upper right. If we go back to record types, so our DDG location should be good to go, right? And you see record name, queryable, name, sortable, good. Okay, new type. This is DDG profile. Hit return. And there we go, same thing, more of the same. I'll pull up the profile screen right here. You can kind of see we're going to need an avatar, first name, last name, company name, bio, and then that is checked in reference to a location. So let's add those real quick. Add field is going to be avatar, and you see that is an asset. Great. Add field. First name, that is going to be a string. Add field. Last name, that is also a string. Company name, also string. A lot of strings here on the profile. Add field. Bio, string. And then lastly, we want the is checked in, which is a reference, because we're going to have a reference to the location when we check in. Okay, I always like to double check before I save, make sure I didn't misspell anything, right? Asset string. The reason you want to be sure you didn't misspell anything is because when you try to access these fields, like in your app, using the CK operation or anything like that, you're going to have a string that matches this perfectly. So make sure you didn't misspell anything here, because that'll lead to errors later. And you'll wonder, what's wrong? And then you'll find out you misspelled something simple like name. Okay, hit save down here in the lower right. Now that we have all of our properties taken care of, now I want to think like, is there anything I want to query on my profile? And again, we're not like searching users. That could be a future functionality, but we're not doing anything like that by now. And like I mentioned before, if later on you decide you want something searchable or queryable, you can always come back and add it. You know, you're not like final here. So I do want to query by is checked in. And that's how we're going to get our list of users, you know, that you see here, like on the locations. We're going to query our users, see where they're checked in at, and act accordingly. So I want to be able to query by is checked in. So again, go to edit indexes, add index, definitely want record name queryable, hit add another index, is checked in, and that is also queryable. So hit save changes. Twice for some reason. Why is that? Why do I got to hit that twice? Okay, so indexes, back to record types. I always double check to make sure it's here. Cool, record name queryable. Well, I'm on DDG location. DDG profile, record name queryable, is checked in, queryable, good to go. Okay, our schema is all set up. However, we don't have any data, right? If I go to, instead of schema, if I go to data on our DDG locations, hit query records, we have no records. So we have to manually create all of our locations like I showed you in the CloudKit dashboard. And like I said, I have a spreadsheet. We're just gonna copy and paste from that spreadsheet to save you some time. But in the next video, we're gonna import all of our data so we have our locations up on our server.